The definition of a good air dribbler in Rocket League has evolved a ton over the last 2 or so years. It seems like it wasn't even too long ago when a clip like this was top tier air dribbling. And to me, this is a good air dribble. I had really good control, kept it away from the defender, and put it into the goal, but now it's gotten to a point where the best air dribblers can literally keep it on their car as long as they want to. Of course, you can't achieve this in an actual game because you don't have unlimited boosts, but you have to admit, it would be pretty cool to be that good at air dribbling. So what really inspired me to make this video was a video I saw from Floomp, where he talks with DLG, who's the best air dribbler in the world. And I watched it, and what really made me want to do this video is when he says this.
Roll it.
Is the key like tornado spinning?
I don't use tornado spins. I actually play claw, default controls.
So yeah, I always thought you needed some sort of crazy controller settings or crazy controller binds to be able to do this, but he says he uses completely normal settings that any player would have. I know it's extremely hard to master since less than 10 people in the world can actually do this, but in theory, with enough practice, anyone could do this. So I decided to make myself a little experiment because I wanted to figure out the best ways for people to get better at air dribbling in Rocket League. So what I did for this challenge is I had to air dribble 500 times as long as I can for 5 days in a row. I decided the best and most efficient way to do this was to do the air dribble workshop map, which I'll link in the description, and see with a ton of practice how long I'd be able to keep the ball in the air and to see how much my air dribbling would actually improve in game. So to keep track of each attempt, I downloaded an app on my phone where you can just click a button and it counts up. So I did that after each attempt, and once I got 500, I knew I was done. So I recorded every single attempt for those 5 days, and I'll show you the best attempt at the end of each day so you can keep track of my progress. So for day 1, a goal in the back of my head was to see if I could beat my personal best time from a year ago. So in that video, if you want to go back and check it out, it took me 2 hours, I believe, to get a record of 15.09 seconds. So back then, that was extremely hard for me, even with a few thousand hours in the game. So I was really curious to know how 1 year of naturally playing the game would affect my air dribbling performance and how substantial of a difference there would be. I noticed after really getting into the groove of things, maybe 50 to 75 tries in, that I was already getting around 10 to 14 seconds somewhat consistently, so I could already tell things felt a lot better than they did about a year ago. And about 100 tries in, I ended up beating my record with a time of 15.6 seconds. Tries 100 through 200, I didn't feel like I was doing that much better, and I wasn't focusing a ton, to be honest, and it almost felt like I was wasting my time a little bit by just doing the same thing over and over again. So I took a step back to analyze what led me to falling down each time, and it was mainly because we kept hitting the ball a little bit off center, so the ball's momentum wasn't going straight up. So I decided to put less emphasis on boosting and more emphasis on just hitting the ball in the exact center to try to keep it going directly up, and that really did change my mindset a good bit, because I felt like step 1 should be learning to hit the ball straight up exactly in the center, and once you get that down, step 2 should be to slowly start prioritizing the amount of boost you use on your air dribbles to keep it up longer. I noticed tries 200 through 250 were really good, but I did end up just losing a lot of focus because it is mentally exhausting, so I decided to take a 10-minute break to get my eyes off the screen for a bit and kind of mentally reset. And when I came back, I felt so much better for the next 100 or so tries and ended up getting over 16 seconds, and then ended up getting my new record. Then for the last 100 tries, I got pretty exhausted again, you know, ended up zoning out. But at the end of the day, I did feel like a better air dribbler compared to when I first started. So for day 2, I decided to spice it up a little bit, so I went to one of DLG's videos and copied his camera setting. These camera settings are absolutely trash for everything but air dribbling. Like, they're completely unreliable for any sort of competitive situation, but that's not what I'm doing right now. I'm only trying to improve my air dribbling and putting all my focus to that. So my thought process was like, if he has these weird camera settings and he's the best air dribbler in the world, then there's a reason he uses those camera settings. I'm not gonna lie, my first few tries with the new camera settings, it was very difficult to get used to, and I was doing pretty bad. But around 100 tries in, things started going extremely well because I could immediately tell a change once I got used to the camera setting. Even after a rough start, I did manage to keep the ball up pretty long because it's a lot easier with these camera settings to see the exact center I talked about previously. So things were going well, and I'm not sure how to describe it, but during attempts 200 through 300, I had a huge muscle memory breakthrough where things started feeling much more natural, and I didn't have to think too much, and I was keeping the ball up like I've never done before. A thing I learned with these new camera settings is that you want your car to look the exact same when you're hitting the ball in the center. So if your car doesn't look like this when you're hitting the ball into the air, then it's likely you'll drift too far to the side and you'll have to be in recovery mode. So basically with this new breakthrough I had, I was able to keep the ball going straight up longer in the beginning, so it would take much longer for me to lose slight control of it and be forced to recover off that touch. So I was starting to break record after record after record, but after around 300 attempts, it felt really unnatural for some reason, and I realized that's just because I needed a break. After a super long time looking at the same thing, you just lose so much focus, so I took a break, and when I came back, things went super well again. But after a while, I noticed I was using too much boost and was losing control of it, and I was like, wait, why am I doing that? And I just refocused on hitting the ball in the exact center, and that's when I started to break even more records, and at the end of day 2, I was really hyped for day 3 because I was just starting to get that muscle memory down. But the question is, will I be able to get it perfect enough to keep the ball up however long I want on day 5? Yes, 25 something. So for day 3, if you have really good eyes, you might notice a slight difference from day 2. So basically I was like, I'm gonna go all out. All the best air dribblers use the breakout, and I've heard it has a good hitbox for air dribbling, but I haven't ever tested it out in a situation like this before. Once I first started, I noticed an immediate difference, because the breakout hitbox seemed to allow a little more space on the nose of the car, so it seemed easier and more natural to keep the ball up there on the nose. A big thing I started to notice on day 3 is not only do you have to hit the ball in the center, but you have to be aware of how fast the ball is going and in what overall direction. It's basically impossible to hit the ball in the exact center every single time, so if you keep track that you're going slightly forward, 4 or 5 seconds from now, maybe you'd want to eventually be facing the other way so you don't go too far and too fast in one direction. You almost have to think about it like one of these staircases. You have to keep going up, but it can't all be in the same exact direction. Another really useful thing I did to help me out was right as I touched the ball, I would actually stop boosting for a sec. So that would create a little distance between me and the ball, and it would allow me a tiny bit of time to get the next perfect hit on the ball to hopefully keep it going back up. People like DLG don't need that extra space because they've put in so much time and practice that their muscle memory is good enough to know what to do without any time to react. So they can basically do everything I just said while dragging the ball to keep it up really quick. So on day 3, I managed to increase my record by 4 seconds or so, but at the end of day 3, my knuckles and wrists really hurt after. So that's just something to be aware of. It sounds funny, but your hands can actually get hurt by playing video games. Alright, so day 4, we chillin'. I was kind of in the routine of waking up early and turning on the computer to air dribble for a few hours. I really focused on getting individual hits like I talked about before, so there's space between each touch. Because once you start dragging it, first of all, it's a lot harder, but it's really hard to stop dragging it and going back to those individual hits once you start. And yeah, I could feel myself gradually getting better and better throughout the day, but there weren't any sudden breakthroughs or anything. So the same thing I talked about before happened around 200 or 300 attempts in, where I got really exhausted, but instead of taking a break, I decided to go to the gym for an hour and head back. So when I came back home, I was all alone, so I just went on my phone, but I realized I needed to get back into the zone. So I opened up Rocket League and got all 500 reps in, and at the end of the day, I felt like I didn't need quite as much space to react in between the individual hits because my muscle memory was getting better, so I could prioritize using boost a bit more. Alright, so day 5 I actually made a lot of progress. So the big thing I noticed on day 5 was the consistency of my average time was much higher. Even on days 3 and 4 when I went well into the 20s on my best attempts, my average attempts were probably somewhere around 15 to 17 seconds. While on day 5, my average attempt was closer to 22 or 23 seconds on almost every solid attempt. So the consistency overall was much better, and I think that was because not only was my muscle memory getting better, but I was getting better at figuring out when I needed to change direction slightly, so it was harder for me to lose control of it by going too far off to the side. So I got in the mindset of not going too far in one direction because you really need that vertical height going to get the best time you can. And another thing I got better at on day 5 was dragging the ball when it sticks to your car. Those individual hits we talked about are a lot easier to do, but if you want to get really good at this, you can't rely on just doing that because you'll eventually start struggling around 20 or 30 seconds in. So to be able to do this for however long you want, you have to get the muscle memory down to be able to just hold boost to drag the ball and still be able to control control it perfectly, without the ball going too far in one direction. So on day 1, it was still hard for me to comprehend how someone was able to keep the ball up for hours, but at the end of the day 5, after air dribbling over 2,500 times, I can easily see how that is possible to do now. I'm not saying I can do it yet, but I can see how someone would be able to master the muscle memory for those quick adjustments with enough practice, because if you're able to get really good at those drags, you can go up towards the ceiling really fast.
Yes, 37, let's go, dude.
So I got better and better at this each day, and my best time out of the 5 days was 37.24 seconds. So I was able to successfully double my record from day 1. And one of my biggest takeaways if you're trying to learn how to air dribble like this is you don't want to really think about it like air dribbling. Think about it like normal dribbling, where you try to keep your car in the middle of that white circle on the ground. So like that, but when the ball is obviously in the air and when you're hitting it with the nose of your car. So at the end of day 5, I tried going back to normal settings to play some ranked and really try to focus on my air dribbles to see if it actually improved. And my air dribbles felt really bad actually, and that's because my normal settings took super long to get used to. But a few days later, when everything was back to normal, my air dribbles in actual games did seem a good bit better, because doing this challenge kind of gave me a greater understanding of air dribbling. And if you want to be a super good air dribbler, I'd probably say do what I did in this video, but for 2 or 3 months instead of just 5 days. If you put in that amount of work, you could probably get the muscle memory down and be one of the best air dribblers in the world. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I thought it was a pretty cool concept and could give you guys some more insight into air dribbling, so if you guys enjoyed it, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Peace.